Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Here we answer your questions on media and production 7 days a week. And of course, you can get those questions into us via Makana. There you can also chat about the questions and vote on the questions. If you're not in Makana, just head on over to officehours.global/join. Register there, and you'll get an email with all the links on how to get on the inside track. Now, that's not the only way to ask questions. You can also go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and it's also on this QR code here. And that allows you to 24/7, anytime a question pops into your head, you can scan that QR code or go to askofficehours.global, and all you have to do is put in your name, put in your question, and boom, we'll work it into the show over the next few days. That's how it works. Alexander, let's get into the first question.
First question this morning is from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Mains power in Australia and New Zealand cities is pretty good. It can also depend on the quality of the wiring in your house or apartment. Can the panel and community recommend rack-mountable power conditioners for use in both a home studio and when touring the world?
Alexander?
I would look at Furman. That would be my first choice, and the reason why is, and actually they make both rack-mountable power conditioners and also UPSs that are rack mount with power conditioning. The reason why I tend to choose Furman is because they have proprietary technology in there that does not crush the dynamics of audio. So I find, especially with UPSs, I find a lot of commercial stuff that is designed to run on a computer works fine for, switches and stuff like that. But anything that is audio related, a lot of times they can really just ruin the audio because of the square wave that they produce, or they don't produce a pure sine wave. And so I find Furman stuff, just for audio related stuff, if you care about it, their stuff works good. They're not cheap, but I think you can get a rack mountable UPS with power conditioning for about $1,500. So they're not horribly expensive. So those would be my first suggestion.
Alex?
Furman for me as well. Nikki also suggests Kakusai voltage regulators paired with Furman power conditioners as well. So those couple other options there.
Next question.
Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia. Any recommendations on comms headset for a live theater audio operator? Current comms system is a Jands Ezicom.
Ronnie?
I think there are a lot of solutions that you could choose between. It depends on the budgets you have. What is being used a lot in Europe and Scandinavia is something called Green Go, which I know is maybe a little bit cheaper than Clearcom and the more professional. It also depends on how many units you need to have online. So that's personnel and how much other equipment like counters and lamps you need to have on stage or backstage. So Green Go is really good. I've used it a lot of times, and it's very popular and pretty inexpensive compared to others.
Jonas?
I would say there's a couple things to keep in mind when you're trying to choose a headset for your existing intercom. I would say location. If it's somewhere where you walk around, one of the reasons why I like my open comms, which you can hook up with some of the comm systems that have Bluetooth, but also check out AV Lifesavers. They have all sorts of adapters that you might want to need. Is during setup, to me, it's really important that people are not enclosed in their comms headset and that they're still hearing what's happening outside of them. We often work in dangerous areas where there's a lot of loads being moved, and I want to make sure that people still hear someone screaming for them, someone backing up with a car or something like that. But then during the show, it might be really important for them to be able to listen to your very exact commands. Then I would choose something closed. Also, looking at your thing, it looks like it's a pretty standard headset for wire headset that you need for that comm solution. What I do is I go to Thomann, and your local equivalent will also have a list of like, hey, here's listen speak combinations, and then think about what price you want, because like price is not only about the budget that you have right now, but also how often are you going to need to replace it, and who are you working with, right? If you're working with a lot of students, maybe even teenager kids, then maybe don't buy the most expensive one and already plan for having the budget to replace it, because nothing is worse than giving a kid something that you can't afford to replace, in my opinion. And then just keep in mind, do they need to still hear what's around them? Maybe for a stage manager, it might still be important that they hear what's happening on the stage. Then you might want something that's only one ear. But I would at least, for doing the show, I would use something that at least covers one ear, and then worst case, it can cover the other ear with the hand, but maybe also something with two earmuffs.
Alex?
Yeah, during the show, oftentimes I prefer double muff, so over both ears. I use a lot of Clearcom headsets. I've used them for a long time. They're very similar. Mickey had pointed out he liked the Sennheiser HMD 26s. Those are single or double muffs. You can decide which one you want to do. Mickey also suggested the Pro Ultimate Ears UE Com, which I'm not familiar with, so we'll check that out. For a lot of stuff I do use the Open Com, like Jonas had talked about there, and I use that for almost all my phone calls. Listenability is very high with the boom, which I find to be really important. So the listenability is good. I can hear everything around me while we're getting set up and doing things. I have had some pairing issues, so I always have a wired solution that is ready and ready to go. And I have two OpenCom 2s that I can switch back and forth with if I need any kind of battery issue. One thing to know is that if you do want to use OpenComs with with your existing system, you can do something like this. This is JK Audio's Blue Set. It has a variety of different plugs, 5-pin, 4-pin, 3-pin, whatever. It turns it into Bluetooth. So you can plug one of those in and then walk around as needed. Again, when it's mission critical, I get to be wired pretty quickly. But when you're getting set up or ongoingly, I think that oftentimes I like to be on Bluetooth. I also like the open comms because I can listen to program in my ears. Now, for an audio engineer, one of the things that we've seen, folks that I've worked with, work on is building their own little mix. So I know that we've had audio engineers that'll do a 4-wire to 2-wire or 2-wire to 4-wire, and then plug that into a mixer, and they're actually taking different channels or different pieces, and oftentimes we have comms available on Dante, so we can pass all the channels in, and they'll actually pan them so they know that the client is talking in one ear, production's in another ear, the program is down the middle, that kind of thing. So they get a sense of what's going on. And over a couple of days of production, they just kind of, naturally know what's happening based on where it is in their comms. And so that's kind of building their own mix to make that actually work.
Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania is asking, does anyone have experience with the Canon R7 MkII workflow? I have a student who shot footage using C-Log, but files won't open on Windows. They open fine on a Mac. Suggestions?
Bill?
You're into the world of video transcoding, and regardless of the camera you shoot on, you can find yourself in a format that won't open in the NLE or the work grouping, the software that you want to use. There are two that I always have on my machines. Both of them, I think, are open source cross-platform. The first one is Handbrake. Handbrake has opened things that I would never have suspected. It runs on either Mac or PC or Linux for that matter. And you can take an encoding, and as long as you can get it open on one machine. Now, you say you have a Mac that opens the files, so I would put Handbrake on the Mac, then transcode it to something else. The other option you have is VLC. VLC is the open source media player that plays almost everything too. It has more limited transcoding capabilities, but those are the two that I always have on every machine I work with, and one of them has been able to open almost everything.
Jonas?
Yeah, one trick also with VLC is that most people don't know is you can also convert using it. Anything that VLC can open, you then can also go to the top left file convert, and it converts it in a common format. What you're probably running into is since you're opening it on a Mac and it works and it doesn't work on Windows, it's probably a ProRes issue. So at that point, I would transcode it. Resolve also has been able, especially the studio version, has been able to open any files I've through edit as well.
Alex?
Yeah, you'd have to let us know whether it is a ProRes file. ProRes file would be part of that, but you can install the drivers. So you have to look at what is that format on a Mac. Almost everything's supported from the get-go. So Apple pays a little more attention to video. So they'll have all of those. Just about every format you can open will open on a Mac. But on PC, you're going to have to sometimes install the drivers that are going to support that. ProRes can be supported on a PC. It just needs the drivers to manage that. Resolve should open everything. So whether you may not be able to open it in the operating system, but any camera file, if it's not able, if the newest version of Resolve can't open it, there's something probably wrong there. I haven't seen something that Resolve can't manage in that area because it's designed to work with all these camera files. So I would see if you can open it inside on Windows in Resolve. I'd be careful of using any kind of transcoding on a log file. You don't want to lose your bit depth. So be very careful of doing that. I'd probably try to bring it into Resolve, do a first light on it, and then put it out and make sure it's in 10 or 12-bit.
Next, I'm sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, you might look at Canon's website and look for the Canon RAW codec for Windows. You might have to download that before any of the applications can then open and display those files on the Windows platform. Also, they have the RAW codec, and they have the HEVC activator for doing the compressed HEVC files from Canon's from the R7.
Next question.
From the QR code, Mike Wilson in Phoenix, what spatial video editing use cases do you anticipate for Final Cut Pro and DaVinci Resolve updates? How will finished videos be distributed?
Alex?
Well, it depends on whether you're talking about spatial or 180. That gets kind of blended together, but there are different formats there. So you have the spatial 16:9, which is what the phone will shoot and what other 3D cameras will shoot. And then you have 180 degree spatial or 180 degree stereo that's there. And so those are different workflows. Both Final Cut and Resolve and Premiere have some tools to do it. There's a high probability that Resolve might be the most advanced version of this. As we look at where they're going with their cameras, that they're going to have a camera that shoots dual 180, and then the camera is going to be able to manage it. But we do expect to see probably most of the major. I'm expecting, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I have no input. But my expectation is that Final Cut usually is updated before the summit that happens in. Is it later this month or next month? Early next month?
November. I think mid-November.
So we would expect it to be released somewhere near there. That's a typical TikTok for Apple. And when they do that, all I'm expecting is spatial tools. Like I just think that's all Apple's going to focus on. Is adding spatial tools to the Final Cut, and potentially I don't think we're going to see a lot with motion as far as those updates. It already has some stereo stuff there. I do think we'll probably see some pretty large updates with Resolve as their new camera comes out of how to manage that content. Where it's going to go, Vision Pro, Meta Quest, those are the kind of things that are going to be, those are the outputs that are probably the most likely, for these to go towards. So there's a potential for some other headsets, but really this is a headset distribution right now. Although there is a lot of potential as these live things start to go forward of seeing more stereo going back to screens. As we get the tools to allow us to actually shoot real 3D, there's more interest in putting that 3D back into movie screens and so on and so forth. What really happened was we had great 3D right at the very beginning with Avatar, and then Hollywood screwed it all up. They were cheap, and they said, "Oh, we'll just cut little cards out, and it'll save us a bunch of money, and we can go back and go to the old ones," and basically created a very unpleasant experience for people to watch it, and killed 3D just by greed. So rather than shooting it properly, and so I think that now that we're getting cameras where we can shoot properly for a lot of these things, as those things catch up, we may see a resurgence of 3D content.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, updates to Andy's Liminal apps are ZoomISO 2.30, ZoomOSC 4.50, Tiles 1.04 beta. What are the qualifications to beta test these, and what is the game plan for utilizing these on office hours?
Guy?
Yeah, I can answer part of the question. These are some exciting updates. Andy came in and showed these, a week ago or so? And if you want to download them, there is not really too much barrier to entry, you just go to the Liminal et.com website, and after you fill out the form via the download link, you should see something like this that says, please check your email. And I just tried this with a different email than I used previously, and the email popped in, and I was able to get to the download page, and this is 1.04. The one thing that you will not be able to do if you don't have an account, so this is the barrier to entry, is that if you're not a hub host or a Zoom events platform, if you don't have a license on the Zoom events platform, then you'll just be running in trial mode. So I think it puts some kind of overlay on here. But once you're in, and then this is a test meeting. If you do want to play with the 8 bots that Oliver has running via Mimo Live, these are all just a Zoom 1080p meeting that you could join, and there's a link on. I'll put it in the chat, and then you can just populate your gallery views and whatnot and play ball. And I'm sure that we'll be using this in our show in some way. Probably most likely evening hours to start, I'd imagine. Alex might be able to talk more about how we'll use it in office hours.
Jonas?
So there's a lot of improvement to the audio pipeline in ZoomISO that we are already using. So that is already in use right now. Other than that, yeah, exactly. You don't need anything then special to be part of the beta. You can just go ahead and download it. And for those of you who do translations and interpretation, there's a really great feature in there now for those that have missed it, that you can pick off those interpretation channels using ZoomISO now.
Alex?
Yeah, we're excited about improved audio workflow. We're also excited about tiles. I'm going to be testing tiles on an event this weekend, so we're going to see how that looks. And we're excited about, especially when we want to display those tiles to a speaker, being able to show some people and being able to make some choices like only show me the people who have their camera on. Those are things that we're pretty excited about. The other thing that I'm excited about, we talked about when during the launch, is the unique speaker tool that's inside of ISO. The reason that's important and that I plan to use, probably not so much here because we have a lot more control, but in some of the other events that I work on, is you have a series of speakers, let's say 4 or 5 speakers that are in Zoom. You're trying to build a show out of it that other people can watch the stream, but you do have students or other people in a meeting and they want to talk. And when they talk, the problem we had before was I can't choose them fast enough. I just need to grab the person that's talking, but it can't be the speaker, so I can't use active speaker, and I can't, I have the speakers that all double up. And what this allows us to do is only grab the people who are talking minus the people who I've already grabbed individual ISOs from. So it's a very esoteric little drop down inside of ZoomISO that's really important. And I think it's going to make a big difference on how you can take classroom or roundtable or open discussions with the audience and turn them into a broadcast effectively.
Alexander?
Alex, I'm curious because you brought up something just now that I saw in the changelog. I didn't really see any details of, but I saw that line that's saying improved audio for professional setups. Do you know what that's about?
Yeah, so we're now getting 48 instead of 32. so that we should hear it. I mean, it's
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it definitely has more dynamic range. So yeah.
Next question.
From the QR code, Marielle Jusha Miera and Woblos asking if anyone has gone unsuccessfully getting a repair done on a Blackmagic product. Please, can you tell us how you did it? Are there authorized repair shops? Should we send it to Blackmagic Design? Teacher has a loose power port and loose HDMI on ATEM Mini Pro and wants to help.
Courtney?
Sending it back to Australia is probably going to cost you more than that ATEM Mini Pro. You might be able to look around if you're in where's Weeblo, Missouri? And see if you can find a shop especially if it's out of warranty. If it's out of warranty, probably not worth the hassle of sending it back to Australia to resolder that power port. But a lot of repair companies that do laptop repairs, you can find a computer repair company in your neighborhood or a city nearby that can do service mount laptop repairs. A lot of times they'll be able to handle resoldering it's probably a loose solder connection on the power port and also on the HDMI port. So they can usually reflow those solder joints at anyone who does SMD, surface mount device repair, like laptop repair companies. You can send it there and probably be your cheapest way to get that repaired. Otherwise, probably best to buy a new one.
Jesse?
They do have repair. Blackmagic does have repair centers in different countries. We sent ours to San Francisco to get our repairs done, and we've always been happy with what they send back.
Alex?
Yeah, it doesn't have to go back to Australia. There's an area in Northern California that does do a lot of the simple repairs that are necessary, like this one. I think that in general, I've always RMA'd directly with Blackmagic. I've never really sent anything to anyone else. The BMD products are manufactured in Singapore, but they're not. There's a definitely repair capability inside in the North Bay. I have always sent it back to Blackmagic to have it fixed. The only time I've not done that is if I've called them and I think that it's going to be too expensive, and then I usually just decide, well, we'll see what we can do ourselves. I've never taken it to an authorized repair. I didn't even know that existed, for Blackmagic. So I think that. So I think you either send it back to them or you try to fix it yourself. What I will say overall, and this isn't going to fix your problem now, is that I built a company. My previous company was built on Blackmagic. Like it wouldn't have existed without that company. At the same time, we had to learn very quickly how to really take really good care of our software, because a lot of the Blackmagic software was not built to be fixed. It is less expensive because it's not like I had a router that someone tugged at the cable and tore out one of the outputs, and that it was now a 40 by 39. Like there was no way to, I talked to Blackmagic and they're like, yeah, well, there's no way to fix that. So, your cost of getting into it is much lower. And again, that was key to what I had, at the time. But I had to be very careful. I had to teach everybody to, the last 2 inches matters a lot when you're setting something down. That you don't, we used we got really good at using convenience panels, really good at taking care of things, really good at, and it actually, just like working with the union makes you better at managing people, like all the time. In the same way, working at Blackmagic made us really good at dealing with equipment, because our equipment stayed in near pristine state all the time, because you wouldn't last in our company if we saw you set something down hard. Like, you could do that like 2 or 3 times and then we'd let you go. So, so that you had to kind of protect the equipment that way. So, with your students, you do need to think about that as well. They just can't have hard hands. Everything has to be gentle when they do that.
Alexander?
One time I contacted Blackmagic Design for a product that was out of warranty. And so if you're willing to pay a deposit and if you just can't have downtime, they can actually rush ship you a replacement, and then you basically send back the damaged one while you're waiting for the repair. So that is a possibility. And like everyone said, it does go to a place in the US, doesn't have to go back to Australia. For basic repairs, of course, any skilled technician can do that. My concern would be if there's actual parts that need to be replaced. I would much rather have Blackmagic Design do it, because I want OEM parts replaced. And of course, Alex's story about that port getting torn out of that the router there and then not being able to have it repaired. This is a problem that's endemic in the whole industry. It's not just Blackmagic. When you have printed circuit boards, and the way we build products now, they're very, very hard to repair. So oftentimes if the board is damaged, that one port is really, really damaged on that board, sometimes the whole logic board has to get replaced. This is a problem I deal with all the time, and it's really, really tough. So Blackmagic is the way to go for repair.
Rian?
My thoughts, if you said that it's loose, if it's not completely broken and it can stay in place and work, maybe what you could do is take the ATEM, put it in a case, and get a patch panel to the back with like a 1-foot cord and have it connected to that. So this way, it's the ATEM is not actually moving and it's stabilized in some way. That may be cheaper than even having the price to ship it out and get it back in, so that at least this way you're plugging into the patch panel rather than directly into the shaky ATEM connections.
Jonas?
One thing I just wanted to quickly mention, Blackmagic has kind of also learned out of experiences that Alex had with like big router panels where like breaking one port is really annoying. So a lot of the newer products with larger sets of in and outputs They do have options for you to replace cards, and it's a card-based assembly where you can replace only a certain amount of it. The new routers, that is the same. Video hubs, that's also the case. So we do see a little bit of change there, but also one thing to keep in mind is those are prosumer electronics, and they are at an amazing price, and that comes with taking efficiencies in building it and not making it as repairable as you might want it to be.
Next question.
From the QR code, Carly Johannesdottir in Fort Duchesne, Utah, is asking, saw an app that helps train you on what various frequencies sound like. Is this a useful skill? Heard the audio staff say things like cut 3 dB at 4K.
Jesse?
Absolutely useful. I'd say essential in going from bad to good in dealing with audio. Knowing what's happening at different frequencies will help you to identify problems in your chain. If you hear a 60 hertz hum, you know something's wrong at a certain stage. You know what to do there. If you hear 120 hertz, you know what to do there. In going from good to great, this will help you create better mixes because you'll understand if there's a bit too much noise in the different pieces of the audio spectrum. And as you're learning to hear it, I'd encourage you to also learn how to see it by taking your audio files and dropping them into spectral frequency analysis tools. And you'll get really well acquainted with what's going on in the different zones, what it sounds like, and how to find noise in your chain just by looking at the spectral frequency readouts.
Ronnie?
Yeah, totally agree. It's really an important skill to identify the different frequencies in a sound or a song or whatever happens, and identifying what the problem is even more important. Having an audio engineer saying drop 3 dB at 4K is probably easy, but the reasoning behind him saying that is even more important. And as Jesse just said, have it analyzed in like something like Isotope RX or similar, to also watch what is happening with the audio when you do this stuff and play live with music and do the changes while you are still listening to the music is really important. And I tend to have my apprentices use headsets with very high quality to be able to identify the different problem areas or what changes in the image. And one way to do that, if you have a mixer, digital mixer, for instance, make your own a test bus with the equalizer, that you can change the equalizer without changing the things going out to the floor or to the front of house, and so that you can test if you're unsure what you're doing, and test the changes before you apply them to the master route or whatever you would need to change.
Alexander?
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. When I first started learning audio before digital mixers and analog, and now we're very spoiled because of course we have all this technology with RTA displays, and we can really see what's actually, you can listen to something but also verify something very, very easily. But when I started learning on analog, we didn't have any of this stuff. So this was back in 2000. So I spent the first 10 years just really practicing with twisting knobs and really learning what frequencies were problematic and committing those to memory, so I know exactly, like now I could even walk into a room and I could look at a graphic EQ and know, like I know what frequencies to pull out immediately. So yes, it is absolutely an essential skill, and it really cuts down on the amount of time required when something happens and there's an emergency and you need to actually make a quick correction. It is incredibly helpful if you know ballpark where to start and to cut those frequencies instead of just twisting knobs and just randomly trying to find stuff.
Bill?
General ear training I'm all in favor of, although I don't want you to chase trying to get perfect pitch in your head. The people who have perfect pitch, God bless them, it is a hard thing and not everybody can develop that. So don't go too far with that. Really, if somebody asks you for something specific, and I'm going to share my screen here really quickly, you can see I pulled up a channel EQ on a piece of audio here, lowered it so I don't have to listen to it too loudly. But you'll see 4K lives right there where my mouse is clicking around. So I just find something adjacent. If they're wanting you to boost it, you can take the Q and narrow it down. And so even without knowing exactly what 4 kilohertz sounds like, I can still effectively execute that. What is important to me is understanding where these frequencies live, kind of what they do. I would think that whoever's asking me to do that found something harsh in the sibilance or something in the top end, because that's where 4K lives. So the general knowledge of how this all works, incredibly important, but don't freak out if you find that you can't tell what A440, well, A440, you probably figure out what that sounds like because that's used for tuning a lot. But a particular frequency, if you can't identify it, it's not going to stop your career.
Courtney?
Yeah, maybe useful. I think more useful, as everyone has said, is learn how to read a frequency meter or frequency analysis software. Because a lot of people have deficiencies in their hearing, especially at high frequencies, depending upon your age and what you've been exposed to in your youth. You may have deficiencies, so you may not be able to even hear stuff at 15,000 cycles or 12,000 cycles to detect it, but you will be able to see it on that frequency analysis software. So that's a better deal. Use your eyes to determine where the problem is and then adjust it accordingly.
Jonas?
I don't think it's any use. Like, if you think you're gonna sit there and say, oh yeah, let's pull out 3dB at 4K, that is not gonna be how it is. How I learned it and what helped me a lot is you have an actual source, a raw source that is untreated. And we had cheat sheets that told you what type of problems are on what frequency. So let's say you have a raspier, you have S-tones, you have echo, you have this and that problem. There's a really nice sheet, I sadly can't find it right now, where I told you this frequency is, if you hear on the guitar too much of the stamping, that is where this probably lives at. And one of the greatest tools is that in an EQ, you can not only remove those frequencies, but you can also boost them. So one of the things how I started is, sound checks took a long time, because what you did is you listen to the sound, you're like, that sounds a little weird, like maybe there's a little bit of raspiness in the voice, the S tones are too high. Let's go in there, and what you do is you go in there, and that cheat sheet is a great way to start with it. You go in there, you have a relatively wide EQ, and you boost it. Is it getting worse? Great. Now really remind yourself what that sounds like. Yeah, that sounds worse. And then you probably want to decrease that a little bit, make it a little smaller. And that's how we started with it. And I can't tell you where stuff is on the, but I can tell you this sounds bad, and you probably need to, and that's kind of like the issue here, I think. You heard someone verbalize an internal decision to the action, and you only heard the action. You only heard 3dB at 4K, but that's not actually what you want to like figure out. You want to figure out, oh, I don't like how this sounds. This sounds bad. That is probably around the 4K range. If you have a wide EQ, take 3dB out and let's see how that sounds. But during sound checks, when you don't have to actively mix, I really like to first boost the problem, listen for the problem, then take it out, probably half of what you boosted it. And I found that is very successful. And then you know what you're hearing for. And that's a lot more useful than being able to pinpoint certain frequencies. Yeah.
Alex?
As an overall note, being able to identify things, being able to train your eyes and train your ears for a variety of issues that come up is extremely valuable. Because it's, there are basically like three components that you have most of the time to work with: the eye or ear to see what's missing, the skills, the technical skills to achieve a solution, and time. The amount of time you'll get to iterate. And that time can be shortened by the right tools being able to allow you to iterate very quickly. But those are the three big things that the three components to moving something forward. But if you don't have the eye for it or the ear for it, then it's very hard. And being able to distinguish that, not just say it sounds bad or it sounds good or it sounds whatever, but being able to distinguish exactly and that's not specifically for audio, for anything, that says that has too much red, that has too much this has too much sharpening, this has too many, these things, but being able to see what that is and be able to distinguish it to other technical operators is, I think, very valuable. I don't know if you need to know exactly what tones are there. I think it is valuable, and a lot of us have a sense of what that is. I don't think oftentimes we're as precise. But I know that I've had a lot of, things where you're listening for something, and until someone points it out to you, and until you are hearing it and distinguishing it, you can't do anything with it. You're not skilled to make that difference. And so ear training and eye training is critical. Probably one of the most important things that you can learn to do over time.
Just a reminder, we're always open for questions at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. And again, it's open 24/7. So if you have a question, askofficehours.global is the place to go. Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth, Virginia. Do you think the Apple TV 4K can be a decent playback device for an event?
Ronnie?
We use Apple TVs for looping and kind of having something on the display. For a live event, I would not trust it because of the latency when you push something and you have it wait a little bit before you start it. We tend to go with other solutions. We use a lot of Blackmagic players. I know Jonas also have an idea on this. We also use software. In a pinch, you could always use QuickTime on a computer. So I'm really looking into what are you doing? What is your general workflow? If you're using a lot of Blackmagic ATEMs, for instance, you can use software like MkII that is automatically being queued and started when you switch to that camera angle or that camera input. And there are so many things that are not asked in this question that I really would like to dig into. So if you can clarify or inform us either in Discord or in the chat, that would be really cool to see what you're actually trying to achieve.
Bill?
The only problem I have with the Apple 4K as a source is that I think it needs a mixer or something like that, a vision switcher, to be able to bring it in. I've had difficulty using the Apple remotes to play something on cue exactly. And while I love it for home watching where it's not mission critical to start now, if I was trying to use it as my sole playback device in that kind of circumstance, I would be a little leery about that. So as a tool in a workflow, yes. As a standalone, this is what I'm going to inject everything with, maybe not just because of the interface.
Jonas?
I think it's a great tool for playback, just not for playback of video. With video, you want to have a lot of control, and in general, if you want to have a lot of control, the Apple TV is probably not what you want to use because you don't want to screw with the remote. But there's a lot of great uses for an Apple TV. We used it in the past to send 2 SRT feeds down to different venues, and that way you have a simple overflow room, put them on the internet, install Lyrics View player on it, and you already have a really high quality feed. We have had people screen share from their iPad to it and play something from there, do scribbles on that. That is great. You have some image slideshow that you want to show. That might be a great solution as well. It's also a really great timer. Like if you have one lying around and you need a timer in your multi-viewer, you can use an Apple TV for that. So there's a lot of great uses for it, but I wouldn't use it for anything that is like you need to control and needs to be exact. It's more of a like looping thing that stays there and sits there. One really important thing, if you are using it, is please be sure that you know and are aware of that there's HDCP issues. There are also often issues with the color and the audio depending on what switcher you use and depending on how your Apple TV is set up. That's all things you can relatively easy change in the settings. You can change where it should output audio, what type of audio it should output. But all of those are things that can trip you up with it. But other than that, it's a really simple, small device that is neat to play some things out. Just not things you really want to have control over.
Ronnie?
Yeah, there's another reason why you shouldn't be using it. If there are other people that know that you have this Apple TV in the network, they could easily take control over what's going on there. So please be sure to disable anything like those functions. And there's also, I was actually hoping that you would mention another software, Jonas, which we know, and that is of course QLab. And there's another thing you have. Can you explain a little bit more what you can do with the software that you know very well?
I'm not sure what
playout be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want a cheap playback system, you can also just use any old computer, put PlayOutB on it, and then do it that way. Sadly, the Apple TV doesn't have web output browsers on it. Otherwise, you could use that as an output.
Next question.
From Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas, what cameras work best with the Stream Deck Pro that work in concert with the Stream Deck pedal?
Jonas?
The best camera that will work with that are the official Elgato cameras that are designed and built to be used with that piece of software. Other ones might work, but since you asked best, those are the two cameras I would look at.
Guy?
Oh, come on, Jonas, you own the camera that I'm about ready to talk about. So with Companion, in the Canon line, you have access to these cool pages. This is where having multiple Stream Decks is handy because you can do things like move the camera up, down, gain up, set your presets, and then on another page you can have recall of the presets. So like on, let's see, on this event, you can see I have one there. Let me see. So here I have 4 cameras. These were Panasonic UE150s, but I have 6 presets, and so I could bang on any of these 4. You can barely see it, but on the far left, I can switch my camera, and then here on this Blackmagic monitor, I can pull up waveforms and scopes so I can see what my brightness levels and whatnot are. So I got 4 cameras times 6 presets. So to me, that's the best, is being able to control all these functions with multiple Stream Decks, but it's PTZ cameras where you ask for the best. The best, I mean, a UE150, you're looking at $9,000 or so. UE160, you're looking at $15,000. Canon CRN 300, 500, 700. You could check the prices online, but those are just great cameras, especially the 1-inch sensor. I mean, they just look fantastic, especially when lit. If you don't give them a lot of light, just with like any other inexpensive camera, you're going to get poor results. But I was on a show this week and just, man, my jaw dropped when some of the sharpness and the detail of the presenters in front of me on the screen, I was just like, wow, this looks money. I mean, and I got comments and comms. It just looked fantastic. So UE150, UE160, Canon CRN 500, 700.
Rian?
Really quickly, I just wanted to know, Guy, how do you find using the Stream Deck buttons to control the cameras work compared to something like a joystick?
Well, I still love the joystick for the fine moves. I mean, as you see in that picture, I still have the RCP panel there with the big joystick there on the top right. But I will use Stream Deck buttons to make little fine moves, because you can put it to the slowest setting and you can just do really, really almost imperceptible type moves. So sometimes when I just don't want to mess with, just chance it at all, I'll use the little fine moves. But really, the joystick is where it's at. On the higher end models, there's some cheap panels that you can get that don't do a good job. Scarhoy has some really nice panels that I'd recommend, but like the cheap Panasonic, I don't remember the model number of the RCP, but it's garbage. It'll throw you off. So yeah, get the good stuff.
And just one quick note, I think Paul was talking about the Camera Hub Pro, which is the Elgato software to control their webcams and their prompter. So that's where the Elgato camera is the best. But of course, if you use Companion or any other camera control software, then there's a lot better cameras. But the Elgato webcams work best with Cam Hub Pro.
Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, and here in the panel is asking, Ross Carbonite Code is exciting. What makes it worth looking at versus other switchers?
Jonas?
It's one of the probably most exciting things I've seen at IBC and NAB last year. And one of the big reasons for us is that it is truly a Ross Carbonite. We have had tags and it also runs in the cloud. So what Carbonite Code is basically a Ross Carbonite, but software-based that has NDI in and outputs. And they do a lot of small things that sound like they're not that important, but really save you. Like one of the really nice things is you have on all your inputs, you can decide how you want to sync them. So you can say you want to sync it with the with the sender timestamp. So when the sender sent it, then everything will be synced by that. Or you can sync it based on the receiver timestamp, or you can do an automatic version, which like that alone, people actually thinking about things like that and giving you the option is worth a lot. We looked into it because it's really kind of magical. Like you install it, nothing happens on your system because it's just a service, and boom, you log into your ROS dashboard, and suddenly you have a switcher there that just looks like every other Carbonite switcher. And in that case, that's like really gets you the scale of, let's say, one of the things we like about Blackmagic is you start with an ATEM Mini and then you can scale up. One of the things we like about Carbonite Code is you start using a Carbonite Ultra Solo, for example, and then you can use Carbonite Code. You don't have to reprogram your whole thing. All the TD panels and the panels that work with Carbonites just work with it. You type in the IP address and it just works. One of the really nice things is it has 6 outputs, 3 multi-viewers, which is someone who has worked with a lot of vMix, where you only get 1 multi-viewer, is so nice. So now we have 6 NDI outputs, and they don't waste any resources on rendering a nice GUI or anything like that. They just give you, tell us what NDI inputs you want, tell us the NDI outputs, and it works. And one of the great things is, that always worries me about software is when it's not deterministic, when the same action can lead to different outcomes. And often, most software gets it right that if you hit the same buttons, the same video output is there. But often you don't know how all the differences affect the resource using. And one of the things that we've noticed with Carbonite Code is that as soon as we have it loaded and it's sitting at the point where we're going to use it for the production, it stays solid at that amount of usage. It's not going to suddenly flake out on us. And that's really one of the great things that we like about it. And pricing model right now is only one-time pricing, but at 15, 16K, that is still relatively affordable, and being able to run it on-prem on your own hardware, get hardware, or run it in the cloud for us is really what made us look deeply into it. It has all the openness. If we talk about Blackmagic being open, at ROS, I can just log into with PuTTY, write my commands in PuTTY, and it sends it that way. And it's all the industry protocols. And if you have any TD that cut their Carbonite, they can just sit in front of their panel, dial in, and use it in the cloud.
Courtney?
Well, that was a really comprehensive. Thanks, Jonas. You just got back from looking at it, so that was a really comprehensive look at it. Just looking at the specs online, it's 30 NDI inputs, 6 outputs, 3 MEs, 6 keyers per ME, so 16 DVEs total. 3 multi-viewers, 4 chroma keyers, and it has an audio panel as well, with aux mix, 6 aux mixes. Looks pretty handy. I was just wondering, one thing I couldn't find is the pricing, but thanks, I didn't know, and what the hardware requirements are. It runs in Windows 11. It will, on a desktop machine, it's Xenix. You want an i9 or later, brand new, one of the 15th gen Intel processors, and you need a GeForce 3070, I think, or more, or to 3090 for an NVIDIA video card and loaded up with tons of RAM, I think. But I was wondering if they do subscription pricing as well, if that's possible.
At NAB, at the ROS keynote at NAB, David Ross, the CEO of ROS, has committed to be able to support multiple price models. But at this point, they haven't released anything around that yet. But that audio mixer also is pretty great. Anyone who knows Blackmagic and ever felt like they wanted to be able to, I just want to pick off those 2 channels of those 16 input channels, that's totally what you can do there. So we can send 16 channels with 1 NDI in, and then pick off each channel into a separate fader in that wave mixing engine. But then also on the output, we can decide channel 1 and 2 is program, 3 and 4 is aux1, 5 and 6 is aux2. So a lot of customizability, and admittedly, if you have worked with a ROS product before, it's really easy to get in, which that was a big appeal for us.
Guy?
Yeah, thank you for all that. I was just wondering, too, if you're looking at it so strongly, Jonas, how are you going to get video into the cloud from on-prem?
I mean, ground to cloud is still probably one of the biggest problems in cloud production right now. It also works great for all our virtual stuff, so we just have that. It fits really well into our ecosystem where we have something before and behind the production engine anyhow. So like right now we use Nimble Streamer where SRT is being sent up and then converted to NDI, so it can just pick it off. All our encoders get there. If you have a MkII or anything that does SEI timestamping, it timestamps it. And some people use NDI Bridge. I wouldn't use that for video right now, especially in not ideal bandwidth conditions. But yeah, you can also, one cool thing is just rent a LiveView server. I think it's $250 a month. Put it in your own cloud and you get NDIs out of there. And then you have a really solid way to work.
Next question.
Chirag Cheetah in Dallas is asking, we are looking at the Stream Deck Studio for an auditorium setup where users could do basic control like PTZ cameras and PowerPoint, and also allow us to control all other equipment in our studio. Is this the right tool for the job?
Jonas?
I think if you want to rack mount it, I have mine here. It really is a great product for that. PoE powered and being able to work over the network. Even with just Companion, we just finished a production where we used it, where we had one TD who had theirs use Companion in the cloud, and then was just remotely connecting over site-to-send VPN to the Stream Deck. But I also used it here locally to be switching my monitoring feeds. And one of the great features is you can also use, there's 2 dials on here, so you can use those to change pages or anything like that. That's all supported in Companion right now. I think especially where this could get interesting is with BitFocus buttons, which is BitFocus's new software, which all of you probably know from Companion. That is now mostly the open source community taking care of that, but buttons is their commercial offering. Because one thing that I don't know if anybody has seen it yet is here's a little tag, because you can put RFID cards to there. So what makes this ideal for a situation like that, especially with buttons, is you can program everything and then you restrict what your day-to-day user can see. And then you give the CEO or important people a key fob or a card that they can tap on it, and that automatically unlocks it. That being said, since buttons is still in beta right now, you couldn't use that. But one really cool trick is in Companion, you can set it to load the ID of your chip or your card into a variable. And then based on that variable, you could go to a page. So at that point, you can just have a key fob. Your normal users can always use it. But then as soon as your tech team comes up and needs to fix something, they just hit their key fob on it, and it automatically gets them into the right page. So I think it's a great tool for that. And even I have little 3D printed feet, so it stands on my desk, and it's even great for that because the viewing angles and the button feel is great.
Guy?
Yeah, in addition to the Stream Deck and Companion, you also have at some of the bigger corporations here in our area, it's a lot of Crestron, but you do need a tech and you need somebody that knows that stuff. So there's Crestron, there's also Universe, QSys. So those are some of the major brands, but you're talking big bucks, like just these NVX encoders. We had 10 of them and they were $2,500 a whack. So I was like, 5. So you need one on the send side and one on the receive side. So just to activate stuff like that, I had to call in IT just to come in and route my stuff for me. So I'd rather have control. So it just depends on how big of an organization you have and what you're trying to toss around, because some stuff, like Jonas was saying, you don't want anybody messing, because they can get in there and do some heavy damage, like resetting IPs and stuff. You're in for a nightmare, especially like our cameras were mounted like 50 feet up and now you got to get a lift or some way to adjust that thing back. So just be careful about access and who has controls. That's why I'm excited about the new Stream Deck as well with the RFIDs.
Next question.
Hook on Fours in Stockholm, Sweden's asking, looking to add Sony PXW-Z200 with 1080p, 100 frame rates per second for instant replay in sport, any NDI encoder that supports greater than 100 frame rates per second.
Alex?
I don't think it does more than 60. I think the NDI codec itself is, I don't think there's any encoders that go over 60 because I don't think NDI supports over 60. I could be wrong, but
I think NDI technically supports it because it's just sending the frames. But I don't know of any program that can output that. So at that point, that's where you would need to go into multiple phases and do 4 phases at 60 or something like that.
Next question.
From the QR code, Vienna in Adelaide, Australia is asking, it feels like I blinked and a new iPhone came out. What are the new and most exciting features of the iPhone 16? How would you sell it to a layman?
Bill?
First of all, Vienna, where have you been? We've missed you. Vienna used to be on the show a good little bit down in Adelaide, and she hasn't been here for a long time. In any case, to answer your question, kind of the big billboard features that Apple have been talking about. First of all, there's a new button on this phone called the camera control button, and everybody who shoots video or does anything in media, pretty excited about that. I guess it's got some kind of touch thing on it. When you invoke it, you'll be able to adjust iris with your finger or your thumb by just rubbing it across the top of the button. It can also, if you're not a video person, be mapped to other functions in your phone. So people are excited about having that extra button, the action button. It does have a faster A18 chip, which means that things should be snappier all the way around. Wi-Fi 7, hopefully, will make it even better in that. And then the other thing that everybody's always applauds whenever Apple manages to do it, which is better battery life. So if you're running out of battery a lot, those are kind of some of the billboard features that have caught my attention.
Alex?
If you have a 15, it's an iffy subject. Like an Apple, sometimes Apple does this kind of TikTok where one it jumps dramatically and the next one jumps a little. And this one jumped a little from the 15. The 15 was a dramatic increase over the 14. So if you have something that's 14 or older, it's a USB-C, it's an entirely different phone. I mean, from a production perspective, you can actually do a lot with it that you couldn't do from the 14 or earlier. If you have a 15, you have to decide whether you want it. If there's a 48 megapixel wide camera, I shoot a lot with the 0.5 lens. I find that I've gotten into this trick where I put someone's face directly in the middle. In fact, I almost want a guide for it. But if you put their face directly in the middle, it doesn't distort it, but it shows you where they're at a level that is really cool. So I have gotten into that. So having a 48 megapixel version of that is kind of nice. It'll also give you potentially better spatial if you're doing spatial records, but that's kind of a little bit esoteric. The button, I think, is going to be useful once they work out some of the bugs. It's a little twitchy from people I've talked to. I am watching. So there's some APIs that I believe are missing for the 16, and I'm not going to update until those APIs are updated. So anyway, I'm holding off for a little bit as a 15 Pro owner. I think but again, I think that if you're a 14 or below, it's a big upgrade. If it's time to upgrade the phone, this is a great time to do it. If you're at a 15, if you have a 15 Pro Max, you probably could wait another year for most people.
The one undersold thing for me about the 16 is that where the button is on it. If you are holding your phone like this, you're now naturally holding the phone with your finger over a shutter button. I feel like when I was here, the lens was kind of down here where I wanted to grab the phone anyway. And it was always a little strange. Now it's much more natural when you're just like this. And it's like my index finger just naturally rests where that shutter button is. So I think the placement is really good. I'd agree with Alex. It's a little tricky to get used to what is a half press like and what is a full press like. But the other thing to think about is that the 5x zoom is now on both the smaller 16 Pro and the Pro Max. So before, I really wanted the 5x camera, so I went with the bigger phone. But I find that this one is really, really comfortable in the hand. But again, if you've got a 15, maybe not. Coming up on Office Hours, we've got tomorrow is our Saturday Q&A, and that is a 1-hour session, and it's live only, so you've got to be in Makana to find it. Again, if you go to officehours.global/join and register there, you can get the links on how to be in Makana. That's also the case for our Sunday show, but besides being just a regular Q&A, Sunday is kind of an introspective episode. We talk about things on office hours. What do we like? What do we don't like? What could we be doing better? Why are we doing some things? And that is live only as well. The other thing I want to mention is that if you are liking what you're seeing and you want to support the show, you can always support the show by going to officehours.global/donate. And if you fill it out there and send us some cash, we'd appreciate it.